Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a look at the deeply wired mind. We're going to decode the profound psychological reasons why a simple, everyday interruption can feel so incredibly jarring, both physically and emotionally, to a highly active mind. If you've ever felt completely derailed by a seemingly innocent question, well, you're in exactly the right place. Let's get right into it.
You know the exact feeling we're talking about. You're deep in the zone. Maybe you're working on a creative project, solving a complex puzzle at work, or honestly, maybe you're just happily lost in a really good daydream. And then, someone walks in and asks you a completely mundane question. Something truly earth-shattering like, have you seen the remote? Or what's for dinner? Suddenly you feel this intense, almost totally irrational surge of irritation. You aren't just annoyed, it feels like your entire mental world just came crashing down around you in a single second, all over something as trivial as dinner. Now, if that scenario hits a little close to home, most people might just call you cranky or tell you to lighten up a bit, but psychology, it suggests a completely different story. Your reaction is actually a sign that your brain is operating on a much, much deeper frequency. That sudden flash of irritation, it's a sign of a rare kind of intelligence. The truth is, you aren't cranky. You're just deeply wired. Section 1. The anatomy of an interruption. Let's break down exactly what happens in your brain when that mental world comes crashing down. Think about it like this. Your brain is firing on absolutely all cylinders. You're connecting dots, creating, problem solving, moving at lightning speed. You are carefully holding together this incredibly fragile, invisible structure of brilliant, interconnected thoughts. And then, hey, have you seen the remote? Everything just halts. That beautiful, complex mental structure completely collapses. That intense, irrational irritation you feel right after, that is the visceral, physical shock of that mental crash. Section 2, multidimensional versus straight line. Okay, let's dive into why that crash actually happens by looking at a fundamental difference in how gifted brains process information compared to the average person. For most folks, thinking is just a straight line. They comfortably process one single thought at a time. Easy, right? But for you, it's multidimensional. Now, society might quickly slap the label of overthinker on you, but the reality is you just have a highly active mind that is constantly weaving a complex web. You're running, analyzing, planning, and mapping out a dozen future possibilities all at once. And yes, that happens even when you're just sitting on the couch trying to watch a movie. And here is the real multiplier effect of a deeply wired mind. Psychologists note that gifted minds don't just have one thought. They have one thought that instantly spawns 10 others. 10. Just think about that for a second. This is exactly why your mind struggles so much to switch off at night. Your brain is simply too busy processing everything. So when someone interrupts your flow, they aren't just breaking one single thought. They are collapsing an entire web of 10, 20, or 50 complex connections that your brain was working incredibly hard to hold together. Section 3. The burden of hyperconnectivity. Let's move on and explore how your brain's insatiable need for depth creates these unique vulnerabilities to outside noise. This brings us to a truly fascinating concept called hyperconnectivity. If you have this trait, your mind literally cannot rest until it sees the full picture. You don't just accept surface-level answers. You inherently crave depth, and you demand to know the why behind absolutely everything. So you aren't just an anxious person. Your brain naturally examines every single angle and detail that others just walk right past. And because of this massive, complex structure you're constantly building in the background, a simple, everyday interruption is absolutely devastating to your workflow. And this brilliantly illustrates the agonizing cycle that follows. You see, to your brain, an interruption isn't just a brief pause where you can just hit play again a moment later. Not at all. It's a massive distraction that forces your brain into a complete data dump. All that gathered information, gone. Once the interruption is over, you can't just casually pick up where you left off. You are forced to restart the exhausting loading process all over again, rebuilding those complex mental connections entirely from scratch. It's mentally exhausting. Section 4, the high cost of noise. Let's put on our detective hats for a minute and uncover the physical, biological toll that these everyday distractions take on your brain. The real reason an interruption feels so uniquely painful is because of this concept right here, cognitive bandwidth. Think of your mental energy as a strictly limited pool. When you're in a deep thinking state, you are reallocating all that precious energy toward things that actually compound over time. Things like learning a new skill, building a business strategy, or creating art. A non-compounding interruption, like figuring out who left the hallway light on, steals from that exact same pool. Because this energy source is so incredibly valuable and limited, surface-level interruptions aren't just mildly annoying. They are, quite literally, mentally expensive. Constant noise and surface-level interruptions have real, measurable biological consequences. They overload your working memory. They literally spike your cortisol levels, which, as you probably know, is your body's primary stress hormone. That makes regaining focus incredibly difficult once the person finally leaves the room. So that flash of anger or irritation you feel, it's just your biology. It's your brain's natural defense mechanism, desperately trying to protect its sensory sanctuary from outside chaos so it can just keep its focus sharp. Section 5, Solitude and Uneasy Rest. Let's transition into how these mental mechanics dictate your social preferences, and let's trace where some of these instincts actually originate back in childhood. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it proves you aren't antisocial at all. You just heavily prioritize where you spend your cognitive bandwidth. Highly intelligent people often have a strong preference for solitude simply because they realize socializing, especially forced small talk, constantly interrupts their flow. To you, a random 3-hour deep conversation about the universe, that is completely worth the massive energy expenditure. It's meaningful. It connects dots. But arbitrary small talk? It just feels like a noisy, draining waste of your precious mental power. Now, there's also a deeper, more emotional layer here for some of us. For those who grew up a bit too fast, this intense irritation can be a sign of what's called uneasy rest. If you were a child who had to be overly responsible or constantly manage adult emotions, your nervous system basically learned to stay on high alert all the time. Fast forward to adulthood, and you might feel useful or safe only when you are doing or actively thinking. Because of this, an interruption doesn't just feel like a break in your focus. Your nervous system misinterprets it as a literal threat to your productivity and, ultimately, your baseline safety. Section 6. Protecting your sensory sanctuary. Let's move to our conclusion, reframing this everyday irritation into a badge of honor for a highly capable mind. Here is the biggest takeaway I want you to have from this explainer today. The next time you feel that flash of anger when someone breaks your hard-earned focus, stop apologizing for your intensity. Seriously, don't feel guilty for wanting quiet. That irritation is simply the sound of a powerful, multidimensional mind trying to protect its work. You are not too much. You are wired for a rare depth that most people are still just trying to understand. It is entirely okay to fiercely guard your profound level of work and firmly take your attention back. I want you to really let this thought sink in. Your silence isn't a lack of progress. It's the sign of a mind that's finally at work. You absolutely do not have to be constantly engaging with the noise around you to be doing something incredibly valuable. Sometimes, the quietest people in the room are doing the absolute heaviest lifting in their minds. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Are you ready to stop apologizing for your mind and start protecting your sensory sanctuary? It might be time to rethink your daily boundaries. Keep exploring the science of your own incredible attention. Guard your deep thinking state, and always remember the massive value of your cognitive bandwidth. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep that brilliant mind at work.